I know, I just, I got it.
Senate will please come to order. Today, our devotional exercises will be conducted by Reverend Rick Swanson of the St. John's in the Mountains Episcopal Church of Stowe. Welcome again.
I invite those who are able to please stand. God of grace and hope, God of abundance and love, we call upon you this morning as the Senate of the state of Vermont gathers to debate and move legislation for the good of the people of this state. Infuse them with wisdom, empower them with courage, strengthen them with resolve. That which is before them offers them the opportunity to act with ethical and moral judgment well beyond the actions of this day. Give them first and foremost a listening ear, a mind that is open to challenge, and a posture of the heart bent for the good of all. May personal conviction not be the sole voice in the dialogue before them, but may their passion for the people of Vermont be the guiding light for the good of all. Only you, O God, know the depths of their lives, hearts, souls, and minds. Give them your grace. Bless this Senate as this session comes to a close, and may they find rest when their work is done. Amen.
Are there any announcements? Seeing none, we have a bill for referral under Rule 31, H626, affecting the revenues of the state will be referred to the Committee on Finance. We also have under Rule 44A, H881, having been referred to the Rules Committee for missing crossover and having been released by the Rules Committee, is now referred to Committee on Government Operations pursuant to Rule 44A. We have a few House bills for reference, the first being H503. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H503, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the town of St. Johnsbury.
H503 having failed to meet crossover, but having already been pre-approved by the Rules Committee, is not being referred to the Rules Committee, but is instead being referred to the Committee on Government Operations pursuant to Rule 44A. We now have H885 from the House. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H885, an act relating to approval of an amendment to the charter of the town of Berlin.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill. Also, this bill normally being referred to the Rules Committee under Rule 44A. Rules Committee has pre-approved, just as insurance companies do, the allowance for the bill to be referred to the Committee on Government Operations. And we have H886. Please listen to the first reading of the bill.
H886, an act relating to approval of amendments to the charter of the city of South Burlington.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill, also not meaning crossover would normally be referred to the Committee on Rules. However, they have pre-approved its dispersal out to the Committee on Government Operations. That brings us to the orders of the day. We are moving forward on the calendar to H882, which can be found in today's calendar on page 3610, if you are looking for it in the calendar. H882 was read for the first time, referred to Committee on Institutions, which has considered the bill and recommends that when the bill is amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill is then referred to Committee on Appropriations, which indicated that when amended, the bill ought to pass. And so please listen to the second reading of the bill.
H882, an act relating to capital construction and state bonding budget adjustment.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill for the report of the Committee on Institutions, Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the senators for allowing me to introduce H822 for consideration of passing. It's an act relating to capital construction and state bonding, or otherwise known as the capital bill. H822 is a continuation really of what we passed last year with Act 69. In Act 69, we agreed that the state would bond for $122,767,376. That in FY '24, we would appropriate no more than $56,520,325. The total of the two-year bonded dollars available for both FY '24 and '25 grew to $130,606,244,000, or $7,838,848 more through the process of reallocation and a bond premium, which I'll explain later. You also authorized in Act 69 last year to spend in FY '24 $39,485,000 worth of cash, for a total of $96,005,325 available in FY '24's capital bill. In FY '25's capital bill, the remainder of the bonded dollars available to be spent is $66,247,051. Through the process of reallocations, as I mentioned above, $2,591,008, and capturing bond premiums of which I mentioned above, and we'll discuss later, of $5,247,839, the total number of bonded dollars to be allocated, if approved, would be $74,085,899. As in FY '24, there's also a cash component to be authorized. That amount, as passed in Act 69, was to be $10 million. But in the budget process that goes on in this building, we seem to be missing $450,000 of it. And as the Senator of Appropriations said, we've been robbed, and she was right. So, but if that's all that we lost, we should be lucky. So our cash for FY '25 available in this bill is $9,550,000, giving us a total to authorize for FY '25 spending of $83,635,899. So the capital bill in the second year of the bill is much like what the BAA is. We approved most of all the monies, other than what we reallocated or got through bonding, or maybe got some more cash. And then the second year of it, we kind of true up everything. We add, we subtract as projects are needed. And so that's what we're going to be going on. So you're going to see a lot of numbers in here that haven't changed from what we passed last year. Those aren't the numbers that we really are interested in focusing on, because we've already passed that. So I want to be able to go down through and just show you the numbers of what has changed of what we passed last year, and then give you some explanations of why it is. So if I could, and I just want to read a little section here that kind of just says that a little bit more as far as what the second year of the capital bill is. It's the intent of the General Assembly that in the second year of the biennium, any amendments to the appropriations or authorities granted in this act shall take the form of the capital construction and state bonding adjustment bill. It is the intent of the General Assembly that unless otherwise indicated, all appropriations in this act are to be subject to capital budget adjustment. So to keep this real, because we are about the numbers in this bill, because that's what we have approved, if everybody could move their attention to this big sheet that we have right here. I'm gonna go down through and just kind of go through the changes on here. There's probably a dozen changes in here of what we passed. So what this sheet will show on line D is really the titles of the projects. Lines E, F, and G will show you what we passed last year in Act 69. It shows the FY '24-25 and the totals of both of those. And then on the green section on FY '24-25 or N, O, and P, it shows you what 24 was, what 25 is, and the totals of it as well. So starting on line 1, section 2, line 1, you're going to see major maintenance, annual appropriations of statewide. You're going to see that in FY, on column F, last year, you approved $8,500,000 for that appropriation. We had $1,099, $999 left over, really didn't have a place for it, and as we never have enough maintenance money is what it is. We added $1,999, making that total $8,501,999. Our next change is gonna be on line 3, which is planning, reuse, and contingency annual appropriations statewide. That number in column F of last year was $425,000. That number moved up $30,000, $455,000. There's not a reappropriation of that they're gonna spend any more money, but later on in this presentation, we needed to find $30,000 for the LCI fishing tournament, and we made a deal with BGS. We couldn't use bonded dollars for that. In a section of this, BGS has some cash. We moved some monies around, but I just want to draw attention of it because that number is going to come back later. And I just really want you to be aware when I reference it. Line 6, it's the therapeutic community residence, master plan design and decommissioning. That's in Middlesex. You can see on lines E, F, and G that the $350,000 was appropriated for approved for FY24, $400,000 for FY25, giving a grand total of $750,000. Moving on to line O, where you'll see there's $50,000. There's some been changes on to that facility, which I have a note here that I want to read to you. That says this complex houses Becerra, which is the state's archives location, BGS print and poster shop. It's the former Middlesex Public Safety Building, but still houses all the communications for the new location. And there are 2 trailers that were used to house people who were in mental health crisis that were displaced from the Waterbury complex during Irene. The plan was to start dismantling buildings, relocate the communications and such, and to modernize space. But the 2 trailers have since been leased to DCF to house up to 4 justice-involved youth until the new facility can be built and brought online in the city of Virgins, which we're going to talk about some language a little bit later, but you've probably already seen in the news that has been announced. And I will show you again later of that plan. So in talking with BGS, because they can't really have complete access to that program, they thought that in FY25 that they had $50,000. They'll be looking for that money later on to continue that. But I'm sure that's going to really kind of fall in line with the progress that we make in building a new facility in Virginia. The next line I really want to draw your attention to, because it's important to us, and there's been a lot of talk about it, is line 8. There are no changes in line 8, none whatsoever, as far as where the dollars are. But you know, we do get asked all the time, well, what's going on with the State House and getting fresh air in here? So I did ask Kate Everly from BGS for an update as far as what's going on with the HVAC system in the State House. I just want to read to you what her response is. The first floor Senate side was completed last summer. This summer, we are tackling the House and Senate chambers. The balance of the State House, 20s, 30s, and 40s. The equipment will arrive in October. If all goes well, it will be installed before the session, this coming session. And she says, I could note that the supply chain remains a real issue, but delivery is scheduled for October. The 20s, 30s, and 40s will have new ductwork supplied overhead in 2025. If there is no additions impacting the mezzanine and the cafeteria, that air handler will be replaced in 2025 as well. If there is an addition, the impacts that the mezzanine and cafeteria, the HVAC will be rolled into the addition. The 25 appropriation allows us to complete this work. It encompasses the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, ductwork, and the cafeteria and mezzanine. So progress is being made as far as on that. And as long as everything comes on like it should, we should be on track. The next line I want to draw your attention to will be line 11, which is a Northwest State Correctional Facility roof replacement in St. Albans. In line E of Act 69, we appropriated $1,300,000. What happens on some of these, you're going to see another project later on. You open these roofs up, you start digging in there, and you can't see it when you kind of plan for the work, but once you get in there, there's more work needed. The governor recommended that there'd be another $400,000 put to that project. The House and the Senate committees both agreed. Lines 15, R22 refrigerant phase out. We're capturing all this R22 things as we phase out these useful life machines that use that, but we still have a lot of machines that still use that, so we capture all of that stuff. You had appropriated in Act 69, 1.25 million for that. In FY25, in talking with BGS, they just really have the capacity to do 250,000, so $750,000 of that. And so we used another $250,000 elsewhere in the bill. The line below that, line 16, art and estate buildings program. We just all really think that this was supposed to be appropriation that was yearly of 75,000, and I think we missed it in Act 69. And so the governors recommend and the House and the Senate concurred that we would put $75,000 in there to make some of the buildings that we have a little bit more beautiful. Moving on to section 3, which would be lines 23, Northwest State Correctional Facility, booking, expansion, planning, and design and construction. We got into that. They got into that project a little bit. The governor recommended another $100,000 after they were, it was just deemed that there needed to be another $100,000 to keep that program on track. The House and the Senate both concurred on that. There's no changes in this, but I do want to make it real. That line's 24, Women's Correctional Facility, Reentry Facility, Replacement Planning and Design and Land Acquisition. We approved last year in Act 69, a total of $14.5 million. That number, in the future capital bills, you're gonna see that number being added to. We're just parking money. We know we're gonna spend some money. We don't know how much, but we know it's gonna be a lot more than that. So I just wanted to draw your attention to why we had $14.5 million there. Lines 25, statewide correctional facilities, HVAC systems, planning, designs, construction for upgrades and replacements. You had approved, first I want to just tell you what that is. For whatever reason, different times, different thoughts, different beliefs, different thoughts on how incarcerated people should be held. Most of all the facilities that are in the state housing these people that are there they're not air conditioned. And so we have been working on trying to figure out how we can get there. The first thought process was that we were going to take the low-hanging fruit. We'll find the areas that didn't have to have the big secure areas, and we'd get those done first. So in FY25, we passed last year, we had $700,000 in there. Since then, the governor recommended that we push that up to 5.15 million because now we do have identified needs that we can spend that money. I also want to note that you're going to see that number go up. That whole program to do all of that, to bring those buildings more comfortable to the people that are living there, that's going to be about $25 million before it's all said and done. So we've got a pretty good start going on that right now. The next line that we have is line 26, which is statewide correctional facilities accessibility upgrades. You didn't appropriate any money for that, but that was because, well, it wasn't needed at that point in time. But there was a lawsuit brought by a group that affected 3 of our correctional facilities, which was Chittenden Correctional, Northwest Regional, and Northern State Correctional, that these facilities weren't ADA compliant. And so $822,000 makes those facilities ADA compliant, and problem solved with that. We're going to go to section 4, which is line 31, which is major maintenance at statewide historical sites. We appropriated in Act 69, both columns E, F, and G, of $1 million when it was all said and done. The House identified a couple $100,000 kicking around. We raised that total to $700,000, another $200,000 more. I can't tell you millions and millions and millions of dollars, as the folks from Brattleboro will tell you, or Bennington will tell you, that they have a monument down there, probably needs $50 or $60 million worth of help, and there's more monies within the state budgets to help with buildings like that. But we just thought with a couple $100,000 on some of these smaller sites, the Calvin Coolidge sites and all the other sites that just, these old buildings that just need to be brought up. We just thought, well, if we had a couple $100,000, we thought that that might be a good way to park it. The house thought about that and we agreed with it. Going to the next page, you're gonna see a lot of numbers that haven't changed. A lot of good programs in there. Nothing's changed. Everything stayed the same until you get down to line 70, which is Fish and Wildlife. General infrastructure projects, including small scale maintenance and rehab improvements to buildings, including conservation camps. So a lot of numbers have moved around here, and we worked really, really hard to get those numbers back. I got a note on that that's going to explain it a little bit better. But in Act 69, we approved $3,122,782. Plus, we approved $800,000 in cash, bringing the total to expend of $3,922,782. The House, in their budget process, took the $800,000 in cash, but they did add back into bonded dollars $555,850. That still left Fish and Wildlife short of $244,150. Well, doesn't seem like that's a consequential small amount. I mean, it just seemed like, oh, well, but that amount right there really caused us concern because it really would make a difference to whether they could effectively operate their conservation camps, Buck Lake and Keyhole conservation camps. We were able to restore $214,000 of those dollars back into that budget. But we were also able to, remember I told you when we first started about on that line 2, where we raised BGS $30,000. We were able to get $30,000 of cash from BGS, and we were able to give it to the Fish and Wildlife, and they were able to give $30,000, which they historically have done to the LCI tournament, something that they wouldn't have done. Now, why would we do that? Why would we just take $30,000 and give it to the LCI? Well, it's this. It's an investment into our future. As we saw when everybody came here for the eclipse, we saw the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people that came here. Hopefully some of those people stay. Hopefully some of these people buy homes here and they build businesses here and they come. The LCI does it on a smaller scale. They're bringing about 5,000 people into our state. And I would think that that type of investment of people doing it at $30,000 would be a small part for us to pay to help show Vermont how beautiful it is. So that's why that's kind of where it is. And we're going to see that $30,000 again. So basically what we did is when we're all said and done, we got Fish and Wildlife back to within $150 of where we first appropriated all that money in Act 69 of last year. And our committee feels really good about that. Going on to the next page. You're going to see on lines 77 all the way through lines 89. You're going to say, okay, what's going on here? The numbers didn't change. So in FY24, on line E, you're going to see where we gave $9,885,000. And we also, and line F, on lines 89, we gave $6 million, but we're just basically parking that money because the programs that we were going to spend that money for hadn't really been developed yet, and we didn't know where they were going to go. We knew we had a need for it. Here's what's important about FY25 line O. All of this money is match money. There's no less than 10-to-1 money in here, no less. So when you look at that $6 million on line O, on line $89, think $60 million, because that's what type of monies that these programs buy within our state. I also want to tell you, you won't see it here, but I want to make you aware of it. On line 78, line O, there's $550,000. When this bill came to us, that's 10-to-1 money. That one program right there is 10-to-1 money. When this bill came to us, that was gone. That money was not there. So it was $550,000 less. And the reason why is the House thought that maybe the agricultural people didn't get in there and talk to them enough. No more than this bill passed, I had a little chair from that side come running to me and said, we got to restore that money. We really messed up. That money is very, very, very important to us. And so we did that. So we got that money back. Very important dollars, folks, for all of those. When you don't have to be a numbers person to know if you can take $1 and turn it into $10, that's very, very important. We're gonna go all the way down to section 15A, lines 121. That is the Department of Labor building. Last year, they weren't ready for anything, but now they're ready for HVAC repairs. Governor recommended $1.54 million to go in there. We concur. Lines 126, State House cafeteria tables and chair replacement. This is about transparency, something that our committee does a very good job with. This money originally was on section 1 of that 8.5 million. It was a $100,000 higher, and we didn't feel good about it. Once we dug into what was all going on, it really wasn't the place for BGS to be having that money. It was really meant for the Sergeant of Arms. The chairs that were in the pavilion down in the basement, chairs and tables, a lot of them got flooded, a lot of them got destroyed, and we had a seating problem up in the cafeteria. There's not enough chairs most of the time. Here's $100,000 for the Sergeant of Arms to go out and repurchase tables and chairs, and to maybe make that space work up there a little bit better than what it is right now. But we just really thought, for transparency issues, that you folks should know, when you start to see new tables and chairs going in the cafeteria and a new configuration, where did that money come from? And I think transparency is the best thing to do, and the committee absolutely positively wanted to make sure that you understood where all that came from. The next page, we're going to go section 16, and which is 132 all the way down to 168. When you talk about reallocation, reallocation is where you go and scrub these projects. Who hasn't used the money? Why is that money parked there? Why is it doing it? What's going on? And when you're on a tight budget year, what we have, you need every dollar that you can possibly get. In FY24, the scrubbing amounted to, as you're going to see in line E on FY24, of $14,767,376. This Senate agreed to appropriate that money last year in the FY24 capital bill. This year, in lines as O, after doing all the scrubbing and everything, came to $2,591,008. Those are all bonded dollars. Those are dollars that you folks have approved and said, okay, we're going to spend those dollars. And so we just bring those dollars back into the mix. Instead of just sitting there, they come back into play, and it is in the capital bill, as I've mentioned several times. The next number that I mentioned earlier when I started my presentation was line 173. That's $5,247,839,000. It's a bond premium. What's a bond premium? The best way I can describe it to you, the easiest way, because it's the way I understand it. We go out to bond, or when the state goes out to bond, they have several companies that want to bond money, dollars for us, and they compete. And so this last time when they bonded for $108 million, as you'll see in lines N, the bond company that actually said that we agreed to get the money from says, you know what, bond with us and we'll give you $5,247,839 extra if you do business with us. How do they do that? They do it by, maybe they got a better interest rate than the other competitor. Maybe they did something, but so by agreeing to do business with that company, they gave us another $5.3 million. So that's where that dollar comes from. It's in the bill. You folks have expended it. So a total of extra on top of where we were before, as I said at the start of my presentation, of $7,838,818. If we could please, if you could go to the next page, section 18, lines 182, lines 183. This is the cash component of it. Remember when I said at the beginning of it, last year, you folks had, you senators had said, okay, yeah, we're gonna do $10 million in FY25. In FY24, we had $39,485,000 worth of cash. We expended that. In FY25, you said, okay, you're gonna have $10 million. Again, through some of all of this stuff, through the House, moving things around, we come up $450,000 short, which I suppose we should be lucky it wasn't more in a tough budget time. I want to bring your attention, because we are all about transparency, and some numbers have changed a little bit. So I mentioned this about 3 times already, lines 183, when we wanted to look for the LCI monies, this is cash. We have to have cash for the LCI. It can't be bonded dollars. Bonded dollars can only be used for a project that's gonna be 20 years or longer. And so this is just kind of where we took the cash from. And as I said earlier, we gave that back to BGS in a different line item. Line 158, Montpelier, 120 State Street, HVAC, steam line replacement renovations. Cash is pretty valuable within this building. BGS said, well, if you really needed it, maybe, we could give you a $500,000 out of that project. And so that project's $500,000 light. The same goes on with lines 193, 194, 195. 800 and I'm gonna go back to another one once I do that one. We lost $150,000 each in each one of those columns. I want you to jump back to lines 184. That's the Barry McFarland re-roof and brick facade repair. You're gonna see that went up $1 million. Again, you estimate these things, you start repairing it, you start taking things apart that you can't see when you estimate it. You want to have your estimates as close as what you can. You open it up and say, oh my God, we got more work to do here. And so governor recommended another $1 million. The House and the Senate concurred. We're gonna see down to lines 205. This affects my seatmates in my area, although it's not his district anymore, but he's still there. No matter what goes on. It's $500,000 that we had approved in FY25. It's for the replacement of the courthouse up there. We're not ready for that $500,000. We still have $750,000 kind of sitting there, waiting to find the site, waiting to do stuff. $500,000 could be used elsewhere, and so we agreed with that. We spoke about this no fewer than 3 times. Lines 208, Lake Champlain International Fishing Derby. That's where that $30,000 got parked. So that kind of goes through all the numbers. I know there'll be some questions later, but I want to draw your attention to the actual bill in itself, because we're going to go through some language. There's a lot of language in this bill. A lot of people had interest, and I want to go to page 14 of this bill, please, if you could. We can go down through this language. Section 11. Basically, the Forest and Parks and Recreation used to use BGS for all the repair work. And for the last few years and such, they don't anymore. All this is doing is updating the language that the Forest and Parks Recreation uses at Department of Environmental Conservation Facilities Engineering, and that's just updating the language so everybody's aware that it's not BGS doing that work, but it's actually Forest and Parks Recreation doing it themselves through that title company. Section 12. This is the Salisbury Fish Hatchery. This is something that a lot of the senators, I heard some of the senators from Addison got some standing ovations. So we were kind of really upset that the fish hatchery was going to be closed. We really kind of dug into it. And we come up, I think, with a great solution. As probably everybody's aware, but December 31st, 2027, the permits that keep that fish hatchery open are going to expire. They're going to have to be renewed. We've heard a lot of big numbers. I don't think we really understand what those numbers are, but we've heard numbers of $15, $20 million to get those permits approved. But in the interim, we've struck a deal with the administration and everybody. I mean, we've had so many people on this bill that have come to us and thought it was a great idea, but we've come to an agreement. The agreement is that we're going to keep this fish hatchery open through December 31st, 2027. And in that agreement, what needs to happen is that we cannot lose Fish and Wildlife or A&R. They cannot let the stocking capacity of what would come out of this facility drop any lower than what it is. In fact, if it increases, we're fine with that. So it talks about the brood fish, it talks about the stocking fish, it talks about egg capacity and all of that. And then we want to know what's going on. I mean, how are you folks doing? So 3 years in a row, on January 15th, 2025, 2026, 2027, we want to report back. How are you doing? Have you made any inroads? Have you identified places if this facilities to close in 2027? Have you made preparations to make sure that we don't lose capacity? All that stuff. And then it is gonna be up to the General Assembly's obligations, to supply funding to keep this place open for the 3 years. We do have on the next page funding for it, which I'll get to it, but, this has been a good win. It's a historic building. At a time when we've had floodings and you have articles, there's some people that would dispute it, some not, but Digger had an article that we possibly lost 60% of our fish stock during the floods that we had this summer, and for the amount of why sell fishing licenses if there's nothing to catch. So felt pretty good about that.
Senator,
Yes.
if I may, just for 1 second, you're reading from a bill in your hand. Just going to direct folks where that is in the calendar, because I don't know that everybody has the same. So you said page 11, but just so folks are aware, section 13, which you just discussed, is in the calendar on page 3620. If anybody's looking to follow along on the amendment by the committee.
Thank you. It's easier for me to read it from here. So
No problem. I just wanted to help connect the dots for
thank
folks.
you very much. Okay. So lines 13 again talks about the annual reports. Again, it comes back that I kind of jumped ahead on. And those reports that will come back and tell us what the status of everything's going on. Lines 14 is the appropriations. The appropriations in the big bill. It's not within the capital bill. There's $550,000 to keep the fish hatchery open through fiscal year 2025. And then it'll be up to the assembly to determine whether they want to keep it going after that. Section 15 talks about the Cherry Street property that's in Burlington. That is the parking garage state facility that we have authorized BGS to sell. They are in an active process of selling it now. I don't know the details of it, but I do know there's at least 2 bidders on that property right now. That building has been concerned. It's actually spent a lot of money, and in the sake of not putting numbers out there to affect any type of sales as people bidding on it, we'll refrain from that. But the state has some monies in there that they'd like to collect back as far as when they sell that building. If they bring enough money on section 15, line 16, you're gonna see notwithstanding language that says that the property located at 108 Cherry Street in Burlington, that's $6,242,500 shall be deposited back into the property management revolving fund to recover the deficit incurred in the fund as a result of the original purchase of the property, and notwithstanding 29 VSA section 168 small c, $293,753.63 shall be deposited back in the state energy revolving fund to repay debt outstanding for loans for energy improvements of that property. Line 16, the sale, section 16, the sale of former Wilson State Police Barracks. We had originally authorized last year for BGS the right to sell that building, but since then Wilson has expressed interest in the property. We slowed that process down. We haven't made any deals with Wilson as far as whether they could buy it, or they came in and testified a couple times. They didn't even know if the community was able to buy it, whether they had an interest in it, or whether they could get any money with it. But because it's there and they have expressed a consideration, we have given them until January of 2025 to tell us whether the town desires to purchase the property, and if so, the feasibility of the town's purchasing the property, including any requested conditions of the sale of the property, and the potential use of the property envisioned by the town. So we've given them until January of 2025. They're to report back to both committees, the House and the Senate Institutions Committees, and tell us where they're at with it. Because beginning on section 36 or section 17, it says that the beginning of July 1st, 2025, the Commissioners of Buildings and General Services is authorized to sell the Williston Public Safety Fields Station and adjacent land pursuant. And so that property is going to come up for sale, and that's we basically have allowed Williston's time to get their eggs in a row to see if it's something that they would be willing to step into. Lines 18. Again, it authorizes and changes that date, that beginning on July 1st, 2025, the Commissioners Building and General Services is authorized to sell the property known as the Williston Police Safety Barracks. The proceeds from the sale be appropriated to future capital construction projects. When we sell those buildings, they come back into the capital bill so that we have to bond for less dollars. Section 19, the duties of the commissioner. Basically, all of this does is, this section hadn't been upgraded since 2001. And it just gives small amounts of dollars for the commissioner should she have to make a decision. And the dollars went up very, very little as far as where it is. The commissioner may, with the approval of the Secretary of Administration, acquire an option for a price not to exceed $75,000. That's what the old language is. We change it on an individual property without prior legislative approval for a price not to exceed 5% of the listed sale price of the property. It just gives them flexibility, trying to put deals together as things go. And as we read some more here, provided the options contained a provision stating that the purchase of the property shall not occur only upon the approval of the General Assembly and the appropriations of funds from this purchase. So they're not allowed to go out and buy something without approval, but it's allowed to get the process going. You're also going to see, as you move down through it, that they had, if they had a project that went up over $100,000, that was language that we did in 2001, but they're allowed to double that now, almost 24 years later. They're allowed to go up to $200,000 to keep the project moving. So again, very modest increases on things that they're allowed to do after 24 years. They're not asking for a lot. Section 20, selling or renting state property. Basically, the state is we're authorizing VGS to sell properties, but we're asking them to sell them for fair market value. If for and that's determined by appraisals. And if for whatever reason that they can't get to that number, they have to come back to the General Assembly before they take anything less than that and get approval. Section 21, Southeast State Correctional Facility potential land transfer report. This is the Windsor facility. All this is doing is there's a lot of protected lands around the good lands of this. And this is a study for Fish and Wildlife to go and see if maybe they might want to reacquire some of that land. See if maybe they want to add to the park that they already have there. It doesn't allow them to do so. It just allows them to do a study to see if maybe that's something that they want to do, and they'll come back and report to us later. Section 22, it's a forensic facility. So the word forensic, what's that mean? I mean, I know when I heard forensic facility, I watched CSI and forensic and all this and all that. I said, oh my God, what are we doing now? We're gonna have our own TV program. But actually, the definition of forensics in this thing right here: individuals who have been criminally charged but are not competent to stand trial. So finally, we're gonna do something about this. We're getting language in there that. In the fiscal year 25, the review, let's see, right here. Let me just go back here. Commissioner of Buildings and General Services, in consultation with the Commissioner of Mental Health and Disability, Aging and Independent Living, shall review the program and needs and facility requirements of individuals who will be housed in a proposed forensic facility. The review shall be performed during the fiscal year 2025 using funds from the Department of Buildings and General Services, base appropriations. And then the commissioner shall report on it before February 1st, 2025 on such findings. And then it says, in the intent of the General Assembly that fiscal year 26, Capital Construction State Bonding Act shall include funding for the design and development of the proposed forensic facility. So a needed facility, folks, we've been talking about this for a long, long time. I know that I'm happy to see some of this stuff move down between the 4 beds that we're doing in the Middlesex part that I talked about earlier, and to see stuff like this. It makes me happy that we're moving forward to take care of some of these folks. Section 23. This is the Department for Children's and Families Youth Short-Term Stabilization and Treatment Center. This is what we talked about earlier. This is the Vergennes facility. This is I'm going to read. I got a note on that as well.
Without objection, you may.
Thank you, Mr. President. But actually, what it is it's being proposed that on state land that we have a 20-year lease versus purchasing, because it allows the facility to be built faster and quicker. The state currently owns the land. The developer will build the building and to our specs and will lease back. As you can see in here, it's not to be for more than 20 years with 4 5-year renewal options for departments for children and families, short-term stabilization and treatment center. So again, we have something that's coming on board. This is going to be to help those kids that are in those trailers and help them leave, hopefully keep them safe, and then help them lead more productive lives and keep them out of harm's way. Section 24, we have the Capital Complex Flood Recovery Special Committee. All this is doing is all the buildings that we have here. It's going through the Joint Legislative Management Council or Joint Physical Committees. The special committees shall comprise the Joint Physical Committee and the chairs of House Committee on Corrections and Institutions and the Senate Committee on Institutions. And this just allows for us to, the special committee shall meet at the call of the chair of the Joint Fiscal Committee in consultation with the chairs of the House Committees on Corrections Institutions and Senate Committees on Institutions. This allows us to keep the work going on all this flooding that went on. And, as the FEMA dollars work through, the insurance dollars work through and all that, this just keeps that conversation going. And and then they, of course, report back to all of us. Also, we have language on section 25, which is the same with the State House Improvement Design Special Committee. This committee right here is, there's been some work that's been approved to make the State House ADA compliant. This just allows this committee to meet and to start moving forward with what has been approved in previous sessions. Section 26, this is the replacement of the women's facility site location proposal and design intent. On or before January 15th, 2025, the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services shall submit a site location proposed for replacement women's facilities for justice involved women to the House Committee or on Corrections and Institutions and the Senate Committee on Institutions. I think that's very, very important to point out some things that are going to. This doesn't give permission to build. It doesn't do anything like that. But what is very, very important is that we're very focused on what is going to be the best outcome once people are housed there, and once people are starting to get integrated back into society. So we're very, very focused on. First of all, we'd really like it to be on state lands if it could, but it needs to be near support services, programming, work opportunities needed to facilitate a successful reentry into the community. And reasonable proximity to the existing workforce to facilitate retention and continuation of experienced staff. The proposal shall consider both co-locating facilities and a campus-style approach, because they're talking about not only are they doing the incarceration part of it, but also the reentry facility. So we really want to make sure that all these, wherever we're putting these folks, that they have the best opportunity that they can once they're out in any capacity to be reintegrated into society and have it convenient for them. As a lot of you have taken the trips to Maine and heard about the women's reentry facility, one of the things that really struck us as a committee is that first of all, they said, don't worry about the size of it because you're always going to need, size doesn't need bed count. And so we're not even talking about that in here. So, but what the other thing that really struck with us is that when we asked them, what could you have done different? What's the one thing that you could have done different? Because there was so many great things going on there. And that was, we wished it was 2 miles closer to public transit. So something like that really made a difference as far as to, and we're going to be laser focused on these sites to make sure that we don't make any of those mistakes. Replacement women's facility, section 27, to purchase land intent report. This is, they're gonna try to build it on state land if they can. That's the first thing, but if they can't, they're gonna be looking at other sites, but the other sites have to have those same requirements as far as being close to everything that's gonna, give as much hope to people having success once they are released. Potential reuse of Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. What this is a study on or before December 15th, 2025. Commissioner of Buildings and General Services in consultation with the Commissioners of Corrections shall report to the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions and the Senate Committees on Institutions and on Judiciary regarding the feasibility of utilizing the site of the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility for a reentry facility for eligible and justice-involved men following the construction of the replacement facilities for justice-involved women. So we're going to look at the Chittenden Correctional Facility and see if we can use that as a reentry site for men before we make any other determinations of what to do with that building. Because that building is kind of right in the mix of where we really would want things. It's right in the middle of services, where the workforce and everything else is. That's section 27. Section 28 is the potential, well, we did that one. That was section 28. Section 29 is the Berry County Superior Courthouse land acquisition, authorization, communications with the city. A lot of things going on at that site right there. We're not sure whether we have enough space to build what we need to do. This is authorizing BGS to acquire land should they need to do what they need to do, but we're trying to get that courthouse back up and where it needs to be. And so this is giving BGS flexibility to do just that, even if it means buying some land that would make sense for them. Section 30, the White River Junction, Windsor County Superior Courthouse. I know I'm talking with some of the senators from that area. They were very, very concerned about when they first started to do that project. What were they going to do with some folks that weren't in the buildings? They were going to lose some lease space. Everything. It was being talked about putting an addition on to the courthouse in itself. But I think the best situation has happened. That we found very great lease space across from the courthouse. This is just authorizing BGS to continue with that because I think it solves the problems that we're having down there. That is the language part of it. It's a numbers part of it. And I want to thank my committee for working really hard. We are a diverse bunch from all parts of the state that has different opinions, different interests, different thoughts, different beliefs. We worked hard to bring the best bill forward that puts the interest of Vermonters first. I also want to thank our committee assistant, Linda. Without her, I mean, we'd be lost. She's just a great person. Let's Council for assigning Damian Leonard with us. But just, again, fantastic. Just always right when we needed him. And also for JFO for assigning Scott Moore. It was the best group that I've ever been involved with since I've been in part of the institution committee. I also would be remiss for saying that Senator Mazza, we love you, man. And we miss you. And it was hard to do this without you, and wish you were here. So thank you, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. The bill is then referred to Committee on Appropriations, and the Appropriations Committee report is by Senator from Caledonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment offered by your Appropriations Committee is on 3629 and 3630. First of all, after the bill was passed out of the Institutions Committee, it was noted that the 100,000 that had been embedded in the other bodies major maintenance line got separated out. And that's for the replacement of the tables and chairs in the State House cafeteria. It was appropriated to the General Assembly, and this is correcting it. That appropriation should go to the Sergeant at Arms. So that is simply not a decision or change that we're making. It's simply in terms of the amount, it's simply where the appropriation should be lodged. What the Senate Appropriations Committee did do is add the intent language relative to property that the state owns. And this is regarding the Southeast State Correctional Facility. We know that there are times when, in fact, the state is out looking to acquire land, and we just want to make sure before any land is sold, that we are really considering what are current or potential uses of that state property. Recently in transportation, we had discussion around the need to have a new site for the central garage. So what that need might be, is not necessarily known, but we wanted to make sure that we were not selling a state asset, that in fact, at some point in the near future, we would say, gee, we wish we had retained ownership, because that would have been an ideal site for some particular state need. So the Senate Appropriations Committee added the language, making sure that we're looking at any potential use before we actually divest ourselves of that property. And the vote in committee was 7-0-0. Thank you.
Senator from Chittenden, from Essex.
Senate institutions looked at that proposed amendments and concur wholeheartedly. We thank the Senate Appropriations for offering.
So the question is, shall the report of the Committee on Institutions be Senator from Caledonia?
Thank you, Mr. President. The presenter of the bill referenced the forensic facility, and that was something that we requested the Institutions Committee consider. Earlier in the session, we actually passed a bill regarding that came out of Health and Welfare, and it stated very strongly that we are in need of a forensic facility. And when we were looking, there was nothing in the capital bill or explicit statement that we intend to get this facility operational as soon as possible. The original plan was to have a wing at the state psychiatric hospital to be used, but that ran into problems with the federal licensing and requirements, and so didn't turn out to be quite as feasible as hoped. So we asked very clearly that, and there's no money, BGS said they could do the planning as part of their 25 base budget, but it says it is our intent that once that planning is that we recognize the need and to bring back the next phase of getting a facility in place when they do the capital bill in the following fiscal year. So I just wanted to thank the Institutions Committee for putting that in, because I think it's very reflective and is a firm statement of intent regarding legislation that we passed earlier. So thank you very much.
So the question is, shall Senator from Madison,
Thank you. May I inquire of the reporter of the amendment, please?
the Senator from Caledonia is interrogated as a reporter of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I may have missed this, but in your amendment, oh no, I just lost my, oh no, the second instance is deleting section 14 of the bill, which I believe is related to the Salisbury Fish Hatchery. And I just wondered, I think there's something in the big bill on this, and I just wondered, you didn't mention that, I don't think, and would just like clarity on what the status is.
Thank you. What we were discovering, we had some duplication, so it's exactly what that was dealing with.
It's the funding is in the big bill, Mr. President?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I know that that would help make you an honest person, so. But in this
Thank
case,
you. I
it was,
appreciate that, Mr. President.
Because people have made statements about the intent to continue the operation. And so that is just to recognize that the funding is residing in the big bill.
Perfect. That's what I thought. Thank you.
Senator from Windsor.
Thank you very much. Your Windsor delegation over here is a little concerned about, and I would love to inquire of the reporter of the amendment and then inquire of the reporter of the bill. if I may.
Senator from Caledonia is interrogated as a reporter of the amendment.
So thank you. Thank you for this addition. We have had many proposals on how to reuse this property. And I am just concerned with how they're being reviewed at the moment, and is your amendment in response to that, to all of those proposals, because it is a very valuable 100 acres that we've retained. The town has the rest. It's a beautiful park. I encourage all of you to come and walk it. It's a wonderful wildland. However, we have saved this 100 acres and we're hoping to put it to productive use. And do you have a specific, do you have a specific, of all the plans that have been presented, do you have a specific plan in mind for how to reuse this property?
Mr. President, the Appropriations Committee did not have a specific plan. We have just had a variety of conversations around state property and potential use. And so we were feeling that it was really our fiscal responsibility that we not sell one parcel. And if in fact it could have been used and we end up incurring an additional expense of acquiring property somewhere else. So it's a matter of looking at what we have for publicly owned land or property and making sure that we are not divesting ourselves of property that in fact is needed to support some state government use. So nothing in particular, it's simply making sure that we are fulfilling kind of that fiduciary responsibility, that we make sure that if there's a potential use, we're protecting the state's interest.
Thank you. I appreciate that value and that intent. And now I'd like to inquire of the reporter of the bill, if I may.
The senator from Essex is interrogated as a reporter of the institution's report.
Thank you. It was our understanding that there was going to be money in the capital budget for the demolition of the buildings which are in need of being demolished in order to enable some of the terrific plans that have been put forward by a group of stakeholders that I know the Senate institutions and House institutions and corrections committees have looked at. And I would just love to understand from the reporter where the demolition money is and where your committee is in considering the plans to move forward on for that property to make it a productively used property.
Mr. President, thank you for the question. We have not seen anybody that comes forward yet with any monies or any plans or anything. We've seen a lot of ideas. We've seen a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot. This year we took testimony from a group that had a wonderful plan to put housing in there and all of that, but they were looking for all the parcel. They were looking for us to carve out a parcel. But this year we haven't taken any testimony from anybody that had any concrete plans as far as to, buying the whole properties in itself, and certainly would welcome anybody, plans and look at everything. As far as tearing down buildings, that money, there's been money sitting in there since 2022. And even before I was part of the capital bill, there was money sitting in there for more. But yeah, there has been some buildings that have been, that could be tore down. But the thought of the institutions committee is that, let's wait until we have something solid. With my background in real estate, the best time to do something is when you really have somebody that has money in hand, they can show us a clear plan that they can get funding, and then they can tell us, okay, well, what do you want? What do you want us to do? Do you want us to tear down this building? Do you want to tear down that building? But as far as right now, there's nobody that has come forward that actually has a check in hand with a design that could show us that, okay, if you tore down that building over there, we would buy it. Or if you tore down that building over there, we would buy it. And so as of right now, there's too much need for the monies elsewhere within the capital budget. But if somebody could come up with a good plan, I bet that we'll work with everybody. Once we get the General Assembly's approval that we could sell that land first, we'll work with anybody. As of right now, nobody has come forward with any solid plan, a proof of funding, or even a purchase of intent, a purchase option idea, just with, hey, would you guys consider this? And admittedly, they had no funds, no monies. It was just an idea. But yeah, we would work with anybody. But as of right now, we're really not in the interest of tearing down any buildings until we can have a really solid idea about which ones we should tear down. Because we tear down this one, somebody else might come along and say, why'd you tear that building down? We were really looking at that. So if somebody came forward with a plan, yeah, we would be more interested.
Thank you. What does it cost every year for us to maintain the buildings that are sort of falling into modest, that are being less than perfect and that are sort of less than perfect now?
Well, I think that that's an inaccurate description. I think that all the buildings there could be moved into tomorrow with modifications as far as where things are. They're heated for the most part and are ready to go. So I don't know the cost of plans. Maybe before third reading, I could huddle with BGS. But as far it is right now, those buildings should be used tomorrow. You never know in this world what's going to go on. I mean, we might need to temporarily house some folks that are incarcerated, and we might need there might be a natural disaster where all of a sudden we've got to put some folks up for housing. You just don't know. And those buildings, just to start tearing down perfectly great buildings with an idea that somebody might be interested in buying them, for me, as far as in a real estate world, doesn't make much sense to me.
And I appreciate that. I guess my last question for you, and then the rest we can chat offline, is my understanding is that there was some, and I may not understand this fully, but that there was a hope that the institutions committees would respond with some of the ideas that have been presented with next steps in that planning process. And so I guess we are not understanding what the next actionable items are from those ideas that have been presented by the stakeholders. Last year, I think they were presented, and our understanding was that the state needed to green light some of it, and that our committee needed to green light some of that, and to move some of those ideas into plans.
Mr. President, the people that came forward had no money. They had no plan. They had an idea about what they were going to do for housing. They didn't have anything other than a great idea, which we would appreciate. But at that point in time, I'm aware of nothing that we were really supposed to respond back to. I definitely will ask further. But other than that, we thought it was a great idea if they could put something together. But they had. As far as I remember how the testimony went and the plan went, they had no money. They didn't even have town approval. They didn't know how they were going to get to where they did. But they liked the site, and we would be certainly happy to engage with anybody. No decision has been made about that property as far as anything. And in fact, the idea of tearing down buildings, none of that was even requested when they were there. They weren't even going to use that part of it. They were going to use a part of the property that keeping all of the building facilities intact. So certainly happy to talk with anybody, have them come forward with us, show us the plan, show us what you want, and we could get a great discussion going. But as far as anybody who wants to buy that site, show us your intent, show us the money, show us that you have it. We'll talk with them for sure.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Question is, shall the report of the Committee on Institutions be amended as offered by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have amended the report of the Committee on Institutions as offered by the Committee on Appropriations. Up to you, Senator, if we continue. All right, we have an amendment from Senator. The question currently would be, shall the bill be amended as offered by the Committee on Institutions? However, if there's another amendment to offer, now would be the time to stand. Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an amendment that was brought forward by the chair of House Corrections and Institutions. It was something that they had hoped to get into the bill, and quite honestly, just whatever happened, happened. And at the last hour, it came over to us, but it was an agreement that was made. So what this amendment does is that when Springfield, the town of Springfield gave authorization from the state to put a prison in there, there was an agreement that if the town of Springfield ever needed some land to site a new town garage, that part of the portion of the land that was that prison was to be built on would be allowed to be for that to the state to turn it over to the town for that use. So basically, the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services is authorized to transfer to the town of Springfield a portion of the Southern State Correctional Facility property consisting of approximately 10 acres to be used as a location of a town garage. Transfer shall be contingent on the state obtaining state and local zoning and subdivision approvals that are necessary for the transfer. The negotiations and agreements between the state and the town of Springfield regarding the maintenance and upkeep of the access road and the water and sewer service lines for the correctional facilities and transfer parcels. The transfer parcel shall not include any brownfields on the Southern State Correctional Facility property. In the event the town does not utilize the transfer parcel for a new town garage, the town shall consult with the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services regarding any proposed alternative uses of the parcel. The transfer authority provided pursuant to this section shall expire on July 1st, 2027. Our committees reviewed this language, Mr. President, and we wholeheartedly concur with this amendment.
So the question is, Senator from Bennington,
Mr. President, may I inquire the reporter of the amendment?
Senator from Essex is interrogated as a reporter of the amendment.
Mr. President, the long history of the relation between the town of Springfield and the prison, there's one real concern I have. There was a pad built at the prison, which is currently unused. It was going to be a work program at the prison, which would have provided jobs for the inmates. Instead, the state got forced to put in the driveway, and they used the money for that building for the driveway. Are we now giving that pad to the town of Springfield to build a garage?
Mr. President, I will have to, before third reading or take a short recess and get that answered. That's information that I was unaware of. So I'd be more than happy to get that answered by the folks that we have in
Mr.
attendance.
President, I would prefer not to have a vote on this amendment until we can determine the location, the planned location of the garage, because I would hate to see the opportunity to someday have a workforce program at the Springfield prison. And the pad is right there. So those of you who may not visited it, it's very close to the prison itself. It was an ideal solution to a problem, but the money went into the driveway. Don't ask me why that happened.
Mr. President.
Okay, hold on one second. If the senator is done with his interrogation, if you thank the
Thank you.
senator, and if the senator is done with his comments, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator from Chittenden Central.
Apropos of those last comments, I would like to move that we adjourn until 1 p.m., stopping action where it is, and we will pick it up at 1 p.m. pending announcements. And if I might
Senator,
begin
continue.
the announcements. We are looking forward to third reading of 687 when we come back. So in advance of that, I believe in the lounge, in the legislative lounge, we'll be having an all Senate caucus to answer questions. Senators Bray and Rom Hinsdale will be answering your questions between now and 1 o'clock. So please bring lunch, come have your questions answered, and then we will come back at 1 p.m.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate now stand adjourned until 1 p.m. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand adjourned until 1 p.m.